Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok to you. How are you? It's Friday. Thank God it's Filipino. You know that one. That's an old one. Friday, Filipino. What's the F for? This is Emil Amok's Takeout. That's what I call the show. I'm Emil Guillermo. Emil at Amok.com. We call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. And if you're none of those, you're just an ALL. All's the rest of you, welcome to the program. We do this show to tell you WDAAT. What does an Asian American think? Yeah, what does the Asian American think about anything, about the news? Oh, there is a considerable amount of news today, and we're going to talk about it. WDAAT. What does an Asian American think? Show 193. We've done 193 of these. I'm proud to say, just because stuff happens, we react. We're in life. We got to react. Today, we're going to talk more about Hana St. Juliana. Hana St. Juliana. That name sounds familiar. Who is? You know who Hana St. Juliana. It's not Hannah. It's Hana. I'll explain. We'll talk about the Michigan parents. Now, apparently, they're on the lam. They're fugitives. They're being called fugitives. They can't find them. They were charged in court. Now they can't be found. They're the parents, the Crumleys, the parents of the gunman, the accused gunman, 15-year-old Ethan Crumley. Now his parents, mom and dad, are making it a family affair. We're going to talk about gun control. We're going to talk about whether good parenting is good gun control. Or good gun control is good parenting. A lot of people say it's not about good gun good parenting is not about good gun control, Emil. It's about involuntary manslaughter. Okay, yeah, legal eagles. Yes, involuntary manslaughter. Did something you do cause someone to die? Yes. We'll get into that as we outline the prosecution's case or their charges. We have Professor Dan Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State, a JD, which means don't mess with me. I know the law. No, Dan is teaches in the College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State University, has a JD, teaches law and politics. We'll talk to Dan about this really historical thing with Michigan. We'll talk also about Roe, what happened this week with Roe v. Wade. But I want to open up right now in our time because, I'm on. We do this show 2 p.m. Pacific live. 2 p.m. Pacific. And you say, Emil, check your sundial. You're like 5 minutes early. Yes, I'm 5 minutes early because you're lucky if you're tuning in now. It means 5 minutes early before it's 2 p.m. Pacific. It means this is the Lanyap section. The little something extra. That's what we like to do. Give you a little something extra before we get into our program. And the little something extra is try harder. Try hard. I don't know if you've heard about this. I am wearing my red today because red for Lowell High School. That's right. Red for Lowell High School. I went to Lowell High School in San Francisco, the Cardinal. When I was there, they were called the Indians, and then they had to change their name. Say, we can't be Indians. That's how progressive Lowell High School was. Lowell High School, really a great high school. And now you can see, just what Lowell High School is all about. There's a profile of Lowell in a new film by Debbie Lum. It's called Try Harder. And I'm mentioning it today because it's opening all around the country. The Regal Union Square in New York City. If you're in New York City, the Regal Union Square in New York. The Laemmle or the Laemmle Royal in Los Angeles. The Laemmle Playhouse in Los Angeles. So two, the Royal and the Playhouse. I think one's in Pasadena. The Regal Stonestown Galleria in San Francisco. The Regal Stonestown Galleria. See, when I went to Lowell, it was just called Stonestown. There was nothing Galleria about it. But now it's the Regal Stonestown Galleria in San Francisco. You can see it there. And also at the Regal UA in Berkeley. Try harder, not try harbor. That would be like a nautical marine type of thing. This is about Asian Americans. You know about Lowell. It's like 40-50% Asian. It's, as they say in the film, it's a school of Asian excellence. Lowell is where I went. I'm an alum, and I was just interested to see how it was going to be portrayed in this film, Try Harder, because it follows 5 Lowell high school kids, 3 of whom are Asian, 1 black and white mixed race kid who is really she's a star in this movie. Another Caucasian kid, Shay, he's a star in this. And then the Asian kids, they're all stars. Right? He tried to put together this composite of 5 students who will show what it's like to go through senior year at Lowell as you embark on the process of getting into college. Because that's why people want to go to Lowell, because they all want to go to Stanford, apparently, which you'll find out in the film. No spoilers here. All of them want to go to Stanford. Do they get in? The real thing that gets you in this movie is the pressure cooker that these kids go through. And sometimes I thought during the movie, okay, look, I can see the pressure cooker. I see the steam. Wow, it's amazing. But they point out to some things I wish they had gone through or addressed. Like, are Asians really discriminated at Lowell? I mean, if not all the Asians do go there. But how do you address the idea that there's discrimination against Asians when they don't get into the schools that they want? And that usually is after Lowell. Like if they don't get into the Harvard and the Yales and the Stanfords, is that discrimination? The movie doesn't go into that, but it shows it. You see, oh, God, well, why aren't these great students, these Asian kids, getting in? So it gets you to that question, but doesn't answer that question. It answers this other question. What is life like for Asian Americans who are pushed by their parents, pushed by peers, society to excel? And I think ultimately you got to ask, is it worth it? Is it worth it to be professional students driven to excellence? And what happens when you get to the prize, when you get to the college of your choice? You end up rooting for these kids. You do. You end up rooting, and if they get into the school or don't get into the school, it's sad. I mean, you're elated. You're also sad, and you feel for the Asian kids, the kid with the immigrant parents who looks like she wants to bribe a college interviewer. I didn't think she really wanted to, but it appears that way. Well, we don't see it. They talk about it. Do you root for the Asian American female student who is working hard, editor of the paper, and she applies to 20, 30 schools? How about Ian, who is sort of the narrator who takes you through the Lowell that I went to years ago and the Lowell that exists now? And then I actually felt for all of them, not just the Asian American students, but For Rachel, the half African American, half white student, single mom, whose mom is more Tiger Mom than the Tiger Moms. And then Shay, who has no parents, essentially, who's doing it on his own. What happens to him? Caucasian student. It's fascinating. Fascinating. My favorite, God, I really liked all of them. But there's one Asian American kid who wears a coonskin hat. He's a joker. He's kind of the guy that makes you say, wow, this is not your average Asian American kid. I know, look, I went to Lowell years ago. I applied to Harvard and got in. I know if this kid had applied my year, I think he would have gotten in. Anyway, I won't spoil it for you. You got to see the movie. It's called Try Harder, directed by Debbie Lum. I had a conversation with her. I will put my conversation with Debbie up on my podcast, Emil Guillermo's Takeout, probably by this weekend. Go to the website, tryharderfilm.com, for more details. But I'm telling you, if you ever wanted to know what the pressure cooker of college is like, you got to see this film. Try Harder. Root for Alvin, Sophia, Ian, Shay, Rachel, all five of them. Don't root for the Renaissance Asian, because you know he's going to get in. But it's opening. Today's the big day. If you can possibly make it. Regal Union Square, New York City. It's opening on the 3rd, Friday, today. The Laemmle, or the Laemmle, I don't know, Laemmle, the Royal in Los Angeles, and also the Laemmle Playhouse in Los Angeles, also the Regal Stonestown Galleria in San Francisco. And I think if you're in San Francisco, where Lowell is, in the Bay Area, that's where some of the film folks are going to be tonight. The Regal Stonestown Galleria. I think it's around 7 o'clock. They're going to be there. And the Regal UA in Berkeley, for those of you who just don't want to drive across the bridge. I'm telling you, try harder. If you're older, tell me if you see yourself. If you're younger, tell me if it doesn't say we need to change things, how things are done in education. And it doesn't mean that we have to end Lowell, because a lot of people want to end Lowell. They say end Lowell because we don't want Lowell to have all the top students. My answer has been make all the schools Lowell. Make all the schools good. But you realize it's a matter of resources. It's a matter of money. And then what do? You realize that, well, there are a lot of people out there well qualified. And if you don't get through one passage, one pathway, if you're good, other pathways will open up. I just know that more than 40 years ago, when I was at Lowell and I applied to colleges, the passage was big. It was wide. You can drive a truck through the passage that said, hey, you want to go to an Ivy League school? I think 1 in 10 got in, which may not sound like a lot, 1 in 10. But I think now the ratio is 1 in 3 get in. Oh, actually, that would be you can tell I'm not a math major, right? Emil, 1 in 3 is actually better odds than 1 in 10. Okay, you're right. It's more like 1 in 20 now, or 1 in 30. It's harder now. The hole is smaller to go through, is my point. Come on, I was an English major. Debbie, I noticed she was a religious studies major. And then ultimately, she got her MFA at San Francisco State. So if you just are into the film community in San Francisco and the Bay Area, you got to watch. Try Harder. All right. So, and then see I'll do a review in my talk with Debbie on my podcast, Emil Muck's Takeout, the Emil Muck's Takeout, which I put on, wherever podcasts are. This is the Emil Muck's Takeout live stream where I'm too lazy to edit. No, that's not true. That's not true. But the live stream, that's what this is. I'll put Debbie on the actual podcast. And then I'll write about it on ALDEF. But I want to turn to the ALDEF blog. You know my ALDEF blog. I write for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And if you are in New York, well, definitely you ought to try to catch at the Union Square there. You should try Harder, because Lowell is just like Stuyvesant, just like Bronx High School of Science, So, and what's happening there, right? People want to limit those schools. They say, oh, it's too Chinese, it's too Asian. No. It's public education. That's the problem. All right. So now we're into our show. We're past the 2:00 threshold. Let me talk about Hana Juliana. I talked about her briefly yesterday, but I actually did my column on the ALDEF blog at aaldef.org/blog. You can go look at it, but I show you the picture. It's a picture that everyone's seen of Hana St. Juliana. You've seen her, right? She's standing in the flower fields, and you look at her and you say, are you in the presence of an Asian American? Just look at her. No one has said anything. Oxford, Michigan is 90% white. The parents haven't talked because they're too distraught, understandably so. But every story about Oxford High in Michigan, they talk about the victims, Hana, and it's Hana, not Hannah. Hana is one of the four. And I'm just drawn to her by her lyrically poetic name. And what ethnicity, right? It's a saint's name. She's with the sainted now. She's one of the four killed. I don't mean to discount the others, their lives. Look, all life is sacred, no matter what ethnicity. But being a chronicler and commentator of all things AAPI, when I write for ALDEF, I pay close attention, specifically for Asianness. And I even checked out the demographics at Oxford. I said, 90% white. What are the chances that anyone involved in this story is going to be Asian? And then I saw St. Juliana's picture. And if you look at Hana St. Juliana's picture, there's a look. And then I saw a Detroit TV station do a story, and a local anchor pronounced her name. And there's Hana St. Juliana, only to be quickly corrected by the guy standing out in the field in the cold, standing at the Centennial Park there, where they put up ribbons and they're going to have a tree lighting in honor of the victims in Oxford. And the field reporter said, it's Hana, like the drive to Hana, as in that legendary destination on the other side of the island of Maui in Hawaii. And I just remember when it was a family thing, when I went to Hana, we were driving in a van in Maui, and that road is treacherous as heck, and we're driving to Hana, and 3 kids, I think we had a little family squabble on the road to Hana. Well, it just offset the beauty of Hana, right? But when I heard the field reporter pronounce her name, Hana, the picture, is there any doubt we can confirm Asianness, at least Asianness enough to talk about it here on this program? And yet I know I have friends who say, most Asians don't pay attention to all this. They just, and it would behoove them considering the amount of anti-Asian violence out there. Now more than 10,000 is documented by the Stop AAPI Hate folks. How can you afford not to pay attention? But there's some people say, if I can't relate to this, I'm not going to pay attention. I don't want to, I got other things in my life. Well, look, this one hits home. You got to pay attention. And it hit home for me because I looked at Hana's picture and I realized I was drawn to it because she looked like my 3 kids. That combination of mixed Asian American, Filipino, and white. When do you see that happen in these kind of news stories? Not often. But that's what you call relatability. That's what you call, you see yourself in this story. So I kept looking at Hana's picture every time they talked about the story in Michigan, and the picture drew me closer because it looked like one of my daughters. And they're adults now, but I still remember them like when I was their coach for the under 15-year-old girls. And I pick up my phone. What can I say? Hana St. Juliana brought out the parent in me. And each time I'd see that, I felt compelled to text one of my daughters. You okay? Of course, misspelled. Love, heart, dad. It's just a reaction, right? To stay in touch. Just like the kids who felt compelled to text when they were trapped in that classroom at Oxford High, in between the moments of genuine fear and terror. A tearful text. They got one out. 1 or 2. Expressions of love to mom, to dad, or grandma. Hana wasn't so lucky. She was in the hallway as 15-year-old Ethan Crumley, armed with his dad's 9mm handgun, opened fire. It was his father's gun, bought 4 days before the shooting. What was Ethan Crumley doing with his dad's gun at school? That's bad parenting. What are you doing not locking up your gun? It appears that there's no law about securing a gun in the home. But that's why the Oakland County prosecutor, Karen McDonald, has said she was weighing the charges against the parents, right? Ethan, already charged as an adult with 1 count of terrorism, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, 12 counts of possession of a firearm. And as I wrote my piece this morning, they said, McDonald, the prosecutor, could turn this all into a family affair, which would be rare because when have we ever heard that parents of school shooters, have ever been charged? It hardly ever happens. And as I was writing my piece, Prosecutor McDonald did it. She charged James and Jennifer Crumley with involuntary manslaughter. 1 count for each student killed by a gun that day at Oxford High. And what else? It was sort of obvious. No, I mean, good parenting is the best gun control. And there was no good parenting in the Crumley household. Or from the sound of it, it sounds like they were encouraging at least young Crumley to have the gun and to not get caught doing something associated with the gun. It seemed like they had an open relationship with their son and guns. And if you heard the prosecutor today, you know that was the reason why the charges, 4 charges of involuntary manslaughter, were handed down. Now, I want to bring in Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez, College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State, also a holder of a JD, to help me kind of break down what we saw. Hey, Dan.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, this is why it's handy to have a JD. 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. I know the laws are different from state to state, but what do you think is that we've never seen this happen? People are saying this is historic from that sense in terms of a gun control perspective. What is your view about involuntary manslaughter?
Yeah, that's probably the highest charge that they could place against these parents, given the facts as outlined by the DA, who clearly was very emotional about the situation. She wasn't as cold and calculating as federal prosecutors usually are. They're very matter of fact and poker faced. She was not, and I think appropriately so. I think as a parent and as a humane person, she's really angry, and I think we all ought to be very angry at these two parents who have now evidently absconded. I don't know how far they can get. There's a bolo out on them right now. Be on the lookout. Right there's a bolo on, and obviously when the FBI gets involved, there's an interstate APB. They probably have all crossings into Canada blocked because that would be the nearest border. And if they were found in Canada, we have an extradition treaty too. So I don't know where they think they're going to go.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get away for long. Manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter is probably the highest. I don't think they could do voluntary manslaughter. Um, it's like a manslaughter differentiation between murder one and murder two. Even for involuntary manslaughter, you still have to show a high degree of negligence, approaching gross negligence.
But essentially, what you're showing is that by doing something, uh, in doing, they did something that resulted in the death of these four students.
You can also omit to do something. Um, they were direct contributors. And so in California, I think you might have been able to get a voluntary manslaughter because they were active in procuring the gun.
Right.
And they clearly, messages that the mom put out to friends announcing essentially that they got him a gun for Christmas
Right.
and saying it's his gun, right? That's active. That's active procurement. So they were major contributors to this. And then there's the acts of omission, where they didn't have him. They didn't take him out of school.
Yeah.
The facts aren't clear yet, but the administration supposedly and the parents disagreed on whether or not he should be taken out of school. Now, that act alone, and then the failure of anyone to check his backpack, after all of the messages that were seen and two teachers having seen his messages, his drawings, while in class, one of the teachers took a camera photo of one of the messages that he put out with and the drawings of gun and people shot twice and bleeding and a laugh out loud emoji.
Yeah.
It could.
Well, it with I thought I was bothered when I heard that specifically in the charges, but I was mostly bothered by the fact that it seemed like this was not a matter of parents leaving a gun out loosely because they forgot to secure it. It made it sound like, son, you're going to have access to this gun. It made it sound like this is an open gun household, and we're gonna trust you. You can have access to this gun. It sounded like he could get it anytime he wanted.
Well,
I mean, that's what it
yeah,
sounds. That's what it.
that's it. There's an implication of that, yeah,
Yeah,
and that they were more than just loose, about the gun. They evidently the gun was kept, or at least according to the father, in their room. And he when he heard that there was an active shooter on the campus, he went home to check for the gun, and that's when he reported it as missing. Okay,
yeah.
now I don't know if that's true or not because that's a father's statement, and to the extent that he might try to be exculpatory, excuse his own contribution to the tragedy. We can we trust his statement? Uh,
Well, I think just because they are now fugitives makes me wonder if they, did not, if they just voluntarily came in. I mean, that would have said something about, their intent, and that would have said something about how they view this whole
yes,
thing.
yeah,
And certainly, it just looking at them at the Zoom, during the day in court the other day, uh, the reports were that they told their son not to say anything, that they were getting lawyers, and a lack of cooperation suggests that okay, we need to build up our defense, and so stay put. We're going to be in this together, and it looks like they are to a degree. Although the son with the tried as an adult with the charges of terrorism and the charges of murder. I mean, he's
first degree
clearly,
first degree murder. Yeah,
yeah, he's
I think
part.
he's going to cop. They're gonna do this shrink evaluation. It'll take a few days for that to occur. There'll be two sets of opinions, right? In this instance, where it's not highly political case and the people aren't real wealthy, at least we don't know that yet. Um, the likelihood that they'll have one or two psychiatrists on one side saying he's fit, and that's the prosecution side, right? Saying he's fit for trial, and then the other saying no, he's not. That court forestall procedures a little bit, but I think he's been correctly charged. The terrorism, I don't know. He's got to show a significant amount of intent, and I don't know how you're going to be able to show that. And terrorism usually means a political or social motivation. So I don't know. I don't know how well that's going to stick.
Well,
Uh,
it sounds like maybe none of it sticks against the parents, but they get the kid on the bigger charges.
Sure, they're going to go for first degree. He's going to try. His lawyer would try to mitigate it down to maybe second degree if they have degrees in Michigan. Yeah, it's Michigan. Um, and if it's anything like California law, of course, I'm most familiar with California law, but he's going to try and mitigate it at least down to second degree. And then if they even if they were to able to get a first degree conviction, then an insanity plea or a temporary insanity plea or anything along those lines could mitigate the type of penalty that he gets. He could get life in prison without parole. I mean, for because there's four killings here.
Yeah.
So uh, murder one would work, but it's the insanity defense that I'm concerned with. How is that going to mitigate the penalty against him?
So, even the parents, if they just on the involuntary manslaughter, if they get the highest penalty there, that's 15 years.
Each
Yeah.
for each killing, and so that it's up to the judge whether or not the judge is going to put it before the jury if there's a conviction, right? And they decide that they want to do consecutive penalties, and
Yeah.
then you could go 15 times four, out to 60 years or something in between, right? 15 and 60 years. So it's going to be a very interesting situation, and it's one of those things where, once again, the tragedy can be very educative. It can have education value for the general public, and like the prosecutor insisted, this is also to show that if you're going to have a gun, and in this country you have a right to a gun, right? With every right comes a responsibility. That sounds like my first in class. I talk about rights and privileges, the distinguishing between the two, and then a responsibility, a concomitant responsibility, especially when the right involves a deadly weapon.
Yeah. Yeah, what's strange about this case is that it has never happened before where parents were held responsible for the actions of a kid with a gun. Usually, when you hear about these things, the kid ends up with the gun somehow, through by hook or by crook. They
Right,
get
right.
they get a gun, black market. It's not really about, unless they can take it from their parents. But this, I mean, the parents are going to say it was taken from them, but it sounds like this was kind of like joint custody of the gun. It was like the parents sort of like kept it, but it was the kid's gun, and he did his own social media on Instagram saying, "Hey, look at this beauty I got for Christmas." So I don't I think do you think this
Yeah,
will
with the
have an
love
impact nationwide? Yeah.
with hearts and all that. In California, I know a parent was prosecuted under California law for allowing a gun unlocked, because California's got lock them up, pure gun, and they just
Mm. Dan, you're freezing up on me.
that
Dan, you're freezing up on me. Well,
guns not be loaded, right? And I know that there died as a result of the gun had not been secure. Obviously, to prosecute people for that. Cabinet, even if it had
yeah.
not been loaded, right, at home, it's an automatic,
Mm.
and it's a rather expensive and high quality gun. The Sig Sauer, it's a Swiss made
Yeah,
gun,
yeah. Hey,
and
hey, Dan, you were kind of uh, truncated there by the flagging internet. So
oh, I'm
I'm not
sorry.
going to ask. I'm not going to ask you to repeat all that, but there are differences in the law between
Yep.
California and Michigan, and I think I've heard some references that say there are very loose laws about securing guns in Michigan, and
hmm
so they may not be able to get uh, the parents, but there will be civil culpability against the parents
Oh yeah.
by by the families involved who are victimized.
Yep. Yep. And that's I can we can refer back to the Rittenhouse case too. That regardless of the outcome in that case. Once
Yeah.
again, didn't wasn't Rittenhouse crossed into Wisconsin from Michigan? So,
No, Illinois.
oh, I'm sorry. That was
Yeah.
yeah. I'm
It's all
sorry,
but
Chicago.
it's in that that Midwest kind of framework, and we're guns. It's a gun culture.
Yeah, Illinois is a little more strict too, but that's really strange because Chicago's got great problems, obviously, but
Well, certainly there's a big difference between, say, the urban problems with guns and the problems, well, in the rural areas, it's just accessibility because it's rural. Uh, there's the hunters.
sure.
Access is not considered a, necessarily a negative thing. In Michigan, you have the militias, you have people
Yeah.
of that. I mean, I was looking at the parents of of the Crumleys, and I was wondering if they didn't have that kind of political bent.
It's possible. I haven't seen any reports. I've been looking, even within the last few minutes. The only thing that I've seen is an article that says the parents have had their own problems with the law in the past. The dad was recently let go from a GPS,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
located here in San Francisco, by the way.
Oh what?
So obviously, it's a personal issue, so they didn't explain why he was let go. But
Right.
yeah, I don't know
So
what they do
we
for
were
a living.
talking. Yeah, we were talking about. Well, they're still on the lam, so
Yep, they haven't been
let's
quiet
see
yet.
what happens. You were talking about the prosecutor,
Right.
and when they asked her about how she felt, and I just want to play this speech about how she was angry and how she's trying to separate her feelings as a prosecutor and her feelings as a parent and as a member of the community there.
Be angry too, and I am. But that doesn't mean that there's a criminal culpability. But yes, I'd be angry. I would be angry. I am angry. I'm angry as a mother. I'm angry as the prosecutor. I'm angry as a person that lives in this county. I'm angry. There were a lot of things that could have been so simple to prevent. And yes, there was a perfectly executed response, and he was apprehended immediately, and we have great law enforcement and good training. But I said before, 4 kids were murdered, and then 7 more injured. So yes, I think we should all be very angry, and we should take a very hard look at what is in place in terms of criminal responsibility, what gun owners are required to do. And again, I will say this every single hour on the hour, and I think that I have. I am not here to say that people shouldn't own guns. I know a lot of people who own guns, but they do so responsibly. And it's your responsibility, it's your duty to make sure that you don't give access to this deadly weapon to somebody that you have reason to believe is going to harm someone. And it is our position that on that morning, particularly that morning, but also the day before, but that morning, looking at that drawing, it's impossible not to conclude that there was a reason to believe he was going to hurt somebody.
Now, now they're talking about the drawing where he's drawing
Yeah.
pictures of him shooting up the school and people bloody and the world is dead, and it would be disturbing if you were a teacher looking at that, you would be alarmed. And I guess this raises the issue of whether the school is culpable, if the school did enough, if all the people who you know who like the teachers, did they do enough to alert the school? And
Yeah.
already the
Well, the way, well, unfortunately, the way it goes is the teacher's obligation is to alert the administration. The administration's obligation is to tell the parents and act. When the parents did failed to act, they're now in loco parentis, as the law says, right? They're now in a position of parents. Uh, I think that they should have checked his uh, his backpack for sure. They shouldn't have put him back in the classroom. They should have isolated
yeah.
him, and they should have gotten psychiatric help right away. I mean, he was doing that stuff in class, in front of teachers, right? Get him out of class. I mean,
Cry for help.
this is common sense stuff. You know, this is
Yeah.
common sense stuff, and that's what I think makes me angry is that it doesn't take much to move on this kind of issue. There is no. There was a report, and I don't know if it was accurate, but there was that the superintendent of schools said there was no reason to
I
take
did see.
other
I
disciplinary
did.
action.
I saw a spokesman. I don't know if it was the superintendent, but people asked officials of the district whether or not the district should have done more, or the school officials should have done more. And
Right.
they said, or the man said, there was no reason. Meaning, I guess I was thinking when I first heard it, because this crosses over into First Amendment issues. Where, the guy could be doodling. This is his freedom of
Sure.
expression. Uh, unless you see something, and maybe it's a matter of you don't want to see something, and you don't take the care to go that extra mile and err on the side of being overprotective. So you end up saying, okay, we'll let it go. And then something like this happens.
Yeah. No, that's where I'm at. There's no explanation like, well, it's a gun culture area. It's a suburban, semi-rural area, and the people that concern. He was expressing violence. He was
Yeah.
expressing, killing violence, murderous violence. Uh, how do you excuse that? So I've already heard her say, "Nah, the school can't be held liable." I don't know. I think they can. I don't know if they are going to attack the district, which probably would happen if it something like this occurred here in San Francisco. But certainly, they can attack for negligence the individual administrators. They can do that. You know.
Well, one
Uh,
thing the prosecutor did by bringing it up before the Crumleys were able to turn themselves in, or before they arrested the Crumleys, they made the charges, and she made her case to the court of public opinion, and now
yes, you did.
people
Yeah.
are discussing. Yes, people are discussing it. It may not have the full weight to press the kind of criminality that people would like to see, but it's making people think about good parenting. Although people say, look, this is not about good parenting, it's about whether or not this is about involuntary manslaughter. But it is also about good parenting. If there were good parents and responsibility on the part of the parents, we probably would
Who,
have
who are your
four
who are your
students.
sources? Who are your sources on this? On the issue is this resistance, seeing it
Oh, that's me.
as a parent
That's
issue.
my opinion.
Oh, okay, okay. Uh,
I'm just, yeah.
yeah.
It's my
No,
opinion that it's good parenting.
are there people who are yeah? Oh, yeah. But are you getting any
Oh,
resistance
there
from
are.
people?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Oh, I'm not. But well, I'm just what I'm saying is that I've seen some public analysts who are saying, who are insisting that let's stick to the law. It's not about parenting. And
Oh,
well, because that's the only way you're going to be able to bring about any kind of um, criminal charges against these people if the law sticks, and if saying it's a matter of parenting is sort of it's flimsy in a way because it's no one goes to jail because of bad parenting, but maybe they should because of
uh,
the consequences of the bad parenting.
yeah. No, they can go to jail if there's other side. Okay, in this instance, it's bad parenting because they omitted to do things that might have helped this young man in his obvious
Yeah, he was depressed.
attitudes. Yeah, so good parenting would have meant that they had some kind of attention to this, psychologist or psychiatrist, some reference to therapy or something, right? But on the other hand, right, there are abusive parents, and so parents can be held liable and criminally liable for omissions, negligence, and abuse. So in this instance, I think it's sins of omission, and
Yeah,
that's what makes us think that it's bad parenting. Well, having access to the gun and buying a gun for a 15-year-old kid as his Christmas present, that's highly questionable.
well, Dan,
Highly
you
questionable.
you wouldn't get a 15-year-old kid Legos. Would you? I look. I'm with you. I'm with you. I just well this
The kid's not old enough to drive in the state of California. He'd be getting a learner's permit, right? In the state of California, I don't know what the law is in Michigan, right? Probably similar. But then, hey kid, here's a really, and just to show you how much we love you, it's a Sig Sauer. It's a
yeah.
Sig Sauer.
Hey,
This is
that's
this is one of the best possible automatic, semi-automatic pistols you can get in the whole world.
it's like the Rolex,
Oh,
the Rolex of
oh
handgun.
God.
You know,
Dude.
I that made me think that maybe this was a place, a family where gun culture was accepted because everyone's got to arm themselves, right? Everyone's going to
Yeah.
know how to use a gun, and I know that yeah,
Yeah, it's
they've
sad.
got they got shooting ranges all over the place. California as
Except
well.
in San Francisco, they just closed Jackson Arms, I guess, last year.
Oh, do they? Oh,
So
well,
there's no place. There's Coyote Point, I guess, and there's that one over. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's up above Castro Valley.
yeah,
In the
in Hayward.
EB.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I just
then
I don't know. I have been to excuse me, shooting ranges as like a reporter doing stories on it. They
right.
scare me. I mean, and I've done shooting
uh,
range stories all around the country. I did one with an AK-47 in Texas. Um, I know it's a. I know we'll have to follow this story because it's not going away. And of course, I talked about Hana Saint Juliana. I'm telling you, I keep looking at her picture and I see my
yeah,
kids, I
yeah.
see Asian American kids, and I just, it gets me. It
That's
gets
the
me
first
that
thing.
she,
I don't know if I should be ashamed or not, but that was the first thing I did when I saw her picture. I immediately went to the internet to find out if she was in fact Asian, and
why would
and
you be upset? Why would you be upset with that? I did
well,
that.
because I hate to see things like, okay, now we can be more in, okay, and the importance of this issue, right, as the gun culture issue and the ready availability of guns and all that, and the violence in the schools because there's an Asian victim. Okay, you see, and
Yeah, I see.
it,
Yeah,
it makes me feel bad about myself because I'm willing to use that to educate other fellow Asian Americans. And the second thing that I did was look up my stats because I have stats on it on Asian gun ownership in the United States and how it spiked last year, right?
mm.
And
It
and
did.
how, oh yeah, it spiked last year. It started to spike around March or April when the attacks on Asians were being reported, and the Stop Asian Hate movement was just getting started. It hadn't even been officially established yet, but the gun purchase rate went up. Also, I researched gun clubs, and the name of the man who established the Asian American. I don't know. I forgot the name of the organization, but it's an Asian American, a national Asian American gun owner organization that stresses safety and uh, responsible gun ownership. His last name is Lopez, and
Ah,
but it's an Asian American organization. So I suspect that being an Asian American with
possibly.
last
Yeah.
names, yeah, that he's probably
Possibly
Filipino.
Filipino, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I I get what you're saying. You don't want to use the Asianness, although as I mentioned earlier, and when we began the conversation or began this program, I because I focus on Asian things, I wanted to know if she
sure.
were
Yes.
Asian,
Yeah.
and And like I said, I saw her picture, and then I saw a reporter uh, who had talked to the parents, and they were too distraught to talk, and they said, uh, they corrected him to say that her name was Hana, like the Hawaiian, the Maui,
Maui.
yeah, destined the road to Hana, and that was
Uh-huh.
enough for me. I mean, it's we have the visual confirmation, we have the name confirmation, and it doesn't mean that now we can talk about it. It just means that, hey, there's no excuse to not be involved and understand this story, because Asian Americans are not immune to gun violence in this country.
Right.
And in fact, the last National Asian American Voter Survey said that almost 70-80% of Asian Americans were for gun control. Now that will
Sure.
surprise you a little bit, no?
No, I think uh, Asian Americans generally, right, tend to occupy the center right on most social issues. Okay, uh, but center left is where gun control seems to be. Right, it's not
Well,
eliminating gun ownership, but it's putting rational restrictions on guns. And the thing that bothers me, and the way that I deal with it in my own classes, is when we cover the Second Amendment, I look at the restrictions that have been in place. For example, the 10 round restriction, right? Which we
right.
think, and I
10
thought,
bullets.
well, for several military weapons, especially the Colt 45, that adds 2 to 3 more rounds for
Oh,
the
you're
gun.
right.
So because the original weapon was either a 7 or an 8 round in the magazine weapon, and uh, also a lot of rifles, especially magazine loading
Mhm.
rifles, only allow 5 bullets. They're sold, with a magazine attached, and it only has. So then,
Right.
having a restriction that says 10 rounds, there's going to be manufacturers of 10 round magazines for those
Yeah.
rifles, right?
Well, this guy had three
How is that
50
a
round.
restriction?
Yeah. This guy had 350-round magazines,
Three
apparently.
fifties, 50.
Yeah, he had
Wow,
three 50-round magazines. And because the first round, he had two that weren't used. The one that he was using, he had gotten up to 30. So he had like 18 to 20 left.
I have
And the
never
one,
even seen a 50 round magazine
yeah,
for a
apparently
semi-auto.
it was a 50 round. And yeah,
It
that's
would,
what I,
even a 30 round magazine would stick out about 5 or 6 inches from the butt plate of the weapon. Okay,
I,
and
I think,
that's if a double ramp feed weapon, right, where you get
yeah,
the diagonal feed.
I
That's
think what I
crazy.
heard was 50. Yeah, because he got up
I
to
hope
30
that's wrong,
rounds.
because that scares the hell out of me, man. I mean,
Well, yeah.
you know, that's,
And that's the thing. What were his
okay.
parents doing with a gun like that?
Yeah.
Giving it to
Well,
kids
and
because
that
they were anticipating, maybe they're members, maybe they're militia members. I don't know. Maybe they were. I mean, there's so many things. As soon as you charge the parents, so many other questions come up. And look, this story is not going away, because we've got the funerals coming up. We got the funerals. We've got, the town is going to mourn this weekend. The funerals for Hana St. Juliana is, I believe, on Tuesday. So we have, and then of course the parents could show up. The parents could say, "Here we are. We're turning ourselves in." So, Dan, I wanted
oh
to
my
talk
god.
about Roe, but we've come to the time.
Are we out of time?
Well, well, it says that there is so much to
Okay.
talk
Well,
about with guns, but we're going to have to talk about Roe um, next week, because first of all, Roe came up in discussion because the Supreme Court took up that Mississippi case
Yeah.
on Monday, and
Well,
it looked.
we can briefly
Yeah,
say where we think it's going to go. Where do you think it's going to
yeah,
go? I'll ask you first.
well, look, the decision is going to be made till June or July, so we have some time to prepare for what looks to be inevitable, which is you got a 6-3 court. Here's the 6-3 tyranny of, you know, elections have consequences. Here's the consequence. If you're a woman, it looks like your right to reproductive freedom, your right to choose will end if, with this Mississippi decision. That's my feeling. And then here's even going beyond that. It means that there will be states that are abortion friendly and there will be states that are not. Mississippi will be one of those that are not. California will be one that is. And
Right.
already the state legislature is looking for people to come up with proposals to how do you make the abortion industry, the abortion tourism industry, welcoming to take care of everyone who wants an abortion. And it's going to happen. I mean, out of state abortions, out of country abortions, there are a lot already now. They're going to increase as restrictions, take hold.
Yes.
And I think that's like a lot in the old days. People would say, "Oh, I'm going to Reno for my divorce," or they'll say things like because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
some states were more
Sure.
open than others. It's going to be the same for abortion until or unless we have more enlightened people elected who can appoint enlightened judges. But I think we're going that direction.
Yeah, I agree. It really reminds me. I'll be a little young for this, but it reminded me of the early mid '70s when right after Roe was passed. What people don't realize is some of the laws that have been suggested, that not necessarily all the states have passed them, but that are in the just awaiting the decision by the Supreme Court, right? Also restrict contraception. So
Oh,
this goes all the way back to the mid 1960s, man, with,
yeah.
with the Griswold case, right?
Well,
It's really nuts. I mean, these people want to roll back time,
well,
and that's where we're going.
rollback is the thing, and the liberals made an issue about precedent, how you can't, this is settled law, but if you
Right.
look at it, you look at the laws.
Stare
You know,
decisis.
well, you look at Brown versus Board of Education, which allowed for the desegregation of schools. What did it roll
Yeah.
back? It rolled back, Plessy in
Plessy
1898.
versus Ferguson.
Yeah,
1896.
1896. So that's about 50 years or so,
Right.
60 years. And Plessy said separate but equals the law, and then that was the law, and then that was precedent. Brown reversed that, took
Right.
50,
Right.
60 years. Now we're at that 50, 60-year mark, and maybe that is the benchmark for a generation of sanity. We get 60 years.
That is exactly the argument that is now being made by the people who are supporting the Mississippi law. That was actually made in court the other
Really,
day.
at 50 years, that's
Yeah,
it.
they cited no, they cited Brown. They cited
Yeah.
Brown versus and as overturning Plessy and saying that was legitimate,
Oh,
exercise of this reversal power.
I missed that. But one thing I did hear, I heard Kavanaugh talk to the question the solicitor, and when he
Right.
says, "Do you think that the court is neutral, or the Constitution is neutral, and the court should not weigh in on this, and it's really for the people?" He's really arguing,
States'
or
rights.
yeah, states' rights for abortion. It's
That's
like
right.
slavery.
And well, and states' rights has been exactly the way that all of the so-called conservative states, right,
Yeah,
have resisted, even things like seatbelts, right?
Yeah.
like airbags, like catalytic converters for cars,
Yeah.
and now they're resisting family leave, right?
Yeah. And look,
States' rights, man.
it's going to be the basis for everything. And if gun rights, right?
Yep,
If gun
yep.
rights take
That's
hold,
it.
you got to be responsible.
Right.
Because I like the idea that good parenting is good gun control. That's
Okay.
all you need. Good parenting is good gun control.
Woo.
Bad parenting is when you use your gun against your kids. That's bad. But this is a different. This Michigan case is different. They're using the guns against other kids. That's bad.
Yeah.
But
More often than not, the gun in a domestic violence is a spousal, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's usually the men against the wives or partners. So that's where that goes. But
well,
yeah, it's incredible.
yeah,
It's really incredible. There's so many ridiculous things going on right now, and the kind of arguments that the so-called conservatives are making say, oh well, in the case of overturning Plessy, it's getting people more rights, right? It's encompassing a greater number of people and having them enjoy rights that have been restricted to the few before. Okay, and so how do you equate that action, right, with taking away what has been established as a
yeah.
right for
Well,
over 50 years, right?
and also it's not just Brown is a good example, but you look at all the benchmarks that made America great, really
Right.
made America great. The Voting Rights Act,
More
the
equal,
Civil,
yes.
the
Yeah,
Civil
sure.
Rights Act, all the immigration acts. I mean, they're rolling
Sure.
them all back. And
In the criminal law, Escobedo and Miranda cases, right? Those kinds of
yeah,
things. I make a big deal out of the fact that you realize these cases are about people of color, right? Right, that means that they're protecting more people of color, and that's what people were against back then. The police were up in arms, literally. Right? They were saying, "What do we have to do?" I remember in San Francisco when the POA, the police union
right.
for white folks, right? When the POA was upset because the federal court, I think the Ninth Circuit came down with it first, said you had to have officers that were capable of understanding and speaking other languages than English. They were really upset because they said, wait a minute. So we have to have Chinese officers if we're going to arrest somebody that doesn't seem to have good command of the English language and, they're Chinese. They were upset with that. They didn't want to do that. Okay. Okay.
No.
And so, I think there were only two officers of Chinese ancestry on the force at the time. I happen to know the first two, well, the one is passed now, but the first two Filipino officers in
Wait,
San
who?
Francisco.
Which the
Well, one
first
of them,
two?
I've forgotten their names, but they were hired in the 60s,
Oh,
even before the law enforcement funding came down from the feds, right? And
but
that didn't happen until the late 70s.
but it wouldn't be my cousin Mel Cardenas, huh?
No, he was under the law, the LAFF or whatever it was, the law LEAA. That was it. Law Enforcement Affirmative Action.
I always think about my cousin Mel.
No, I do too. In fact, he's on my he's a friend on Facebook. So
See, this is the thing. We're all such a small group. If your parents came in the 20s and then, had kids in the 50s and 60s, we all kind of knew each other somewhat, you
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
or we weren't, it was like 3 degrees of separation.
Yeah, it was
You know,
pretty
that,
close.
I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, we all got stories about that. I mean, I knew your cousins,
Yeah, I know. I know.
before I knew you.
This is the thing about San Francisco and the Bay
Yeah,
Area.
right.
Hey, listen, Dan.
Okay, so
Look,
we'll get to Roe. We'll
come.
talk more about Roe
We'll
and
come
and
back.
how it affects Asian Americans, right?
Okay,
Because
and
there's a
then
lot of very Christian, very Catholic as well Asian Americans.
Yes. Oh
So
yeah, yeah. I know that that's an issue. So we'll get to that next week. There's some time because it looks like they will come up with it. They have until June or July to come
yeah,
up with
that's right.
a vision.
Uh, and I looked up the 50 round magazine. It
Yeah.
exists, and it is a snail type round drum magazine.
So
So it's round at the bottom, and that's how you can get 50 rounds. That just scares the hell. And guess what? It only costs $90.
well, there you go.
So you could get it. I don't know if you can order that sucker online, but
That,
woohoo!
that's why you get three for Christmas.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh God, I know. We're laughing about this, but
I
it's
know
so
it is.
ridiculous. It's
It,
just
it is.
it's
You have to laugh a little bit to just ease the pain because
oh
it's painful that we talk about this. And so, all right, look, so much for Michigan for this week. We'll follow it on to next week when the funerals happen and when they arrest the parents, hopefully, or the parents of the Crumleys give themselves up. We will talk about Rose sometime in the future as well. Uh, I opened the show talking about Try Harder, which is about Lowell,
yeah.
and it really is funny because I went into that movie and I was hoping that they would get into more about how Asians were discriminated against, but that really wasn't the goal of the movie. The movie was to show you how the pressure that kids go under
Right.
and to get to the college of their choice and how hard it is and how maybe unfair it is. And I think I'm in the unfair category. It's unfair, and I don't want to see Lowell go. I think there should be an elite high school, but I think the pressure is just it's not worth it. And I wish that people would just kind of lighten up about whether or not an elite school is as meaningful as of course, as I say that, there are people who want to carry their Louis Vuitton bags and they want to carry their designer this and designer that. And, going to an Ivy League school or UC Berkeley or UCLA, it's kind of like a designer thing. But, truthfully,
It's stunt board, man.
yeah, everyone. That's the thing. Everyone in this movie, Try Harder, wanted all the Asians wanted to go to Stanford. Of course, Stanford always says no, you're not getting in because they see Asians as machines. And I was thinking, boy, I heard someone quote administrator say that, a
Hmm.
Stanford official, and I said
Hmm.
that's grounds for discrimination more than any grounds that the people who are suing Harvard have. That
Yeah.
Harvard's discriminatory. But
Back in the 80s, when white folks first noticed that Asians were supernumerary at the big, even the big private universities, and they were making inroads on the East Coast, right, at the Ivy League schools, and then even the high science schools like MIT. The old issue of nurture or nature came up.
right,
Are
right.
the Asians succeeding because they're just genetically disposed? Is that correct? I said, how dangerous that is. Or what is it about how they nurture their children that causes them to be so advanced? And people were really upset. That Asians were succeeding. Now the funny part is, you see the outcome is you can't have experts in the sciences on TV or the radio. Again, it's mostly Asians, right?
It's our
It's like,
stereotype. Yeah,
yeah,
Asian the Asian doctor, just like the Asian
yeah,
martial artist.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
but see, we're succeeding in all areas, right? We're in music, right? In dance, in not only ballet and the high arts, but also popular stuff, right? We've
BTS.
got mixed Asians doing hip hop. And a lot of them are local. Her is she's Pinay, right?
Yeah,
Half Pinay.
her out of
She's getting
Vallejo. Yeah.
what she got, nine Grammy awards or something.
Oh
She's
yeah,
got nine awards. You
she
know,
she
it's
she just you know Killed
You know,
it.
it's we got all that stuff going on, and so you can't escape us now, and we're still less than 7%. All right, what are we? Around 6% of the total population
Yeah, six.
in the
6%.
United States. But when you turn on the TV and they have medical professionals on,
Yeah,
it's not just San Francisco, right? I mean, it's like they're either Chinese or some of the South Asian,
right,
and it's also in DC, right?
right,
It's in Biden's cabinet, right? It's
right.
so. What are you gonna do?
That's the thing. We have a role, and yet it's good and bad. We're
Yes,
still not
exactly.
where we should be, but boy, it's a lot different than it was 50 years ago.
It's better in a lot of ways, but it's also bad. Just like 80s, they hate Asians. I mean, it's just we're and a lot of Asians don't accept that. What do you mean? What do you mean we're targeted by racists who don't
Yeah,
appreciate our success and stuff like that? They can't understand that,
there
right?
there, there are people who want to say, "Look, I can defy race. I'm beyond race. I'm a modern Asian American," and then they realize no matter how much money or success you stand on, you can still be discriminated against
Yep, yep.
in our
And
culture.
you can be targeted for violence.
Of course, of course.
I mean, why are all those Asians getting guns?
Yeah, yeah.
Asian gun ownership is way up.
Well,
So
I mean, this is the thing that no matter how much success you think you have, that you can go beyond all the BS catches up with you and
yeah,
never leaves us. And
I
that,
wish it wasn't just BS, but yeah,
yeah,
I wish that it stopped at BS because I can handle
yeah,
uh,
it
verbiage.
it,
That's easy.
it goes beyond, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. At least the attacks on elder Asians in the Bay Area dissipated somewhat, but
You mean people like us?
well, you look younger,
Well,
frankly.
that's why it's my self defense.
I got, I got,
I'm young. I
hey,
stand
right,
I stand in front of my gong, so people say,
sure, sure,
"Oh, the gong is old." That
right.
guy in front of it, he's not that old, but the gong, pretty old.
Well, I hope you do really smart things like not walk down the street with your phone and and be tweeting while you're on the freaking walking on the street. I see too many people doing that with their Apple, and then they're about to get it ripped off, right? So I
That's
don't
right,
know.
because you got to defend your iPhone. If you cannot defend
It's
your
just-
iPhone, you better carry a flip phone. I got a hey, look, hey, that's why I tell my attackers. I say, hey, look, I got one of these,
This is from the 1990s.
yeah, yeah. Or what is that phone that the dumper phones or the
Oh, burners.
yeah,
It's a
I just got a
burner.
burner phone. Sorry,
It's
can't
a
don't
burner.
beat me up. I got a burner phone.
Yeah.
Or
This
yeah,
ain't worth shit. This is $29 at Walmart.
yeah. Oh, you got the Motorola flip phone? Flip phone. My flip phone. It's not smart, it's dumb. Here, take
Yes,
my phone. Take
this
my
is a
phone.
stupid phone. Yes. Okay, man.
All right. Hey, listen, Dan, always good. I mean, I know we like to it's hard to be so serious all the time, but um Michigan made me really kind
It
of depressed this week,
is
and I'm glad that I just appreciate
really
you coming on to explain involuntary manslaughter.
hard
Okay. All right, Dan. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you.
having me on as well. So, weekend. Hopefully, I'll see you next week. Huh?
All right.
All right. Take care, man.
Yeah. All right. There's Dan Gonzalez, our friend. College of Ethnic Studies, San Francisco State has a JD. So if I can't understand the law, he fills in the gaps and says, "Hey, this is what's happening here." So Michigan is not over by a long shot. We'll see if the parents of Ethan Crumley give themselves up. They've been charged today. We'll also follow the funerals that will go on next week in Oxford. Uh, I want to end on one more positive note about Try Harder. It opens tonight in the Regal Union Square in New York, in the Royal Lamelli, Laemmme, Lamley Royal in Los Angeles, and the Lamley Playhouse in Los Angeles. Mr. Lamley, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. At the Regal Stone Sound Galleria in San Francisco, near Lowell, near the Lowell on Eucalyptus there, and the Regal UA in Berkeley. It will open your eyes about what it's like to be Asian American applying to college in one of the most competitive high schools in the nation, Lowell High School. I'm wearing red because it's my alma mater, and I have to say this: I was taken by the kids in the movie. Ian, Alvin, Sophia, Shay. I'm staring right at her face. Rachel. And you root for them. And you hope that they get into the college of their choice. But you know what? If they do or they don't, then what? That's the point where thinking begins and you say, wow, why are we doing this to them? Anyway, Try Harder is the name of the documentary. Debbie Lums, graduate of MFA, San Francisco State in film, went to Brown. We had a nice talk. Look for my interview with her on Emil Guillermo's Takeout coming out probably this weekend, okay, on Review Podcast. All right, that's it with our show. And of course, that means we should begin our goodbyes. You know, you reach this point of the show. This point of the show, you say, oh, Emil, I got this far into the show. Now what? Now what? Well, you know, you can follow us at Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. See the replay of this on amok.com. You can, well, you know, I like to say be here, bang the gong now. Facebook at emilguillermo.media. That's where you can find this on Facebook. We're here 2 p.m. to 3 or so Pacific Live, Monday through Friday. What you could do for the weekend, catch up with our shows. This is show 190, 193. 192 is a good one. 191, oh, classic. 190, good. In fact, all the shows this week were good. And while you're at it, on amok.com, catch my grandmother's story that I do for Thanksgiving. But as I said, you reach this far, I want to thank you. And I want to say, hey, don't despair. I mean, the news is bad, but, you know, you got to be able to understand. Sometimes the more pain you feel from the news of the day, well, you know, you might be able to develop a little sense of humor to ease getting through that pain. I mean, that's helpful, I think. I think it's also healthy. But if you should have that feeling that, oh, Emil, I feel unworthy, I feel like I don't belong, I just feel uneasy. Hey, look, this is where I go into my meditative state and I say, hey, look, calm down, relax. Give yourself an elbow hug. You're good. A little loving self-compassion. And as I like to say, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Till next week, Emil Guillermo here. Mahal Kita.